Maudio, Kawada Tabungai. Chris Brown here, part-time hobo. Well, have you ever heard of a place called Kiribati? I never had, yet I wound up living there for 2.5 years. Kiribati, it was 1989, January of 1989, and my first wife Judy and I had signed up to be in the Peace Corps. Well, they never tell you quite where you're going to go, and at the last minute we were sent to the Pacific island nation of Kiribati. Kiribati is located on the equator. There's actually 33 islands, 16 of which are inhabited. Has an overall population of about 110,000 people, and most of those folks are located on the island of Tarawa, which is a very small atoll island. It is one of the most overcrowded places on the earth per square mile, people per square mile. It's a very tiny place. If you want to find Kiribati, you can look on a map, but it may not be there, just a bunch of little dots of islands. It's on the equator and the international date line. As I said earlier, it's 33 islands, 16 inhabited, spread out in this region of the Central Pacific. We were stationed to the island of Marakei. Marakei had a population of about 2,500 people, located in a variety of small little villages on the island. Now, Marakei had no electricity, a few solar stations here or there, or solar batteries at the time, maybe one or two personal generators, and no running water, only wells that they used to get their fresh water from. So it was a very remote. People made a living by subsistence living, maybe trading a little bit of coconut, but mostly it was living off of what was around them. And they would trade fish back and forth. Now, the Kiribati, or the Gilbert Islands, that it was known previously, have actually been inhabited for thousands of years. The whole islands and throughout the Pacific, mixture as people came across in giant canoes from island to island hopping. The Maori people from the New Zealand area, and others from the Papua New Guinea side, as they populated throughout the Pacific. And they remained on these islands thousands of years, just kind of sometimes trading, sometimes warring with other islands, but largely untouched from the Western world until the 1700s. Then the first whalers came through, and the first explorers came through, and by 1788, Sir Thomas Gilbert, a British explorer, seaman, charted the islands and brought back the information back to Britain. And soon, many more people started to show up. Again, whalers, whaling stations, and others that were just miscreants throughout the Pacific Islands. Well, throughout the 1800s then came the missionaries, and the missionaries were primarily first Protestant from Boston area, and then more Catholics, and then eventually Mormons, and a few Muslim, and Baha'i, and a variety of minor other religions. But the two primary missionaries were Catholics and Protestant. Now, the island we were sent to live on was Marakei. Marakei was made up of about 50% Catholic and about 50% Protestant, and 100% animist and believers in the old ways and the old magic that had come before the missionaries. There was often a mixture of these things. Go to church, act pious on Sunday, but if things really happened, you went back to your ancestral magic and to the things that worked for thousands of years prior. That was the Marakei that we came to. Marakei that was had been this magic woven in throughout the island. And as we arrived, well, we had to appease the magic and of that island, and to work with it and appease the 4 witches that protected the island. Now, Marakei was the only of all the Gilbert Islands, or Kiribati Islands, was the only round lagoon, and you can see it on my shirt. The only circled island, and you can see a small fin on my of land, this atoll, and encircled with a lagoon in the center. Okay, well, when you arrived, the first thing, any visitor to the island that was going to stay there for any length of time, you had to appease the witches. And so when we arrived, the first thing we jumped on, the truck, an old truck that had been around, I think, since just after World War II. It was basically strapped together. It was the only truck on the island, the only transportation. And off we went to appease the 4 witches. And to do this, you stopped at 4 different places along the way, and you with tobacco, and you gave them as an offering and a gift. And at each one, you asked a specific sort of request, that they accept you into the island and then feed you and take care of you and protect you. And that is what we did. So we went along and down the island, and kids were singing and looking at these strange imatongs, imatong being the word for white people. It actually translates to ghost. These strange imatongs had come to live on the island. And who were they? What were they going to do? So we had this crowd following us to the first witch, and we get out and we walk up to this little platform and put the tobacco on, and I'm told by my guide who spoke English what to say. We were told to say something to thank you for accepting us to this island. We hope that we can be good and work and treat you well. It was something in that nature. That was the first stop right here. Second stop on the south side of the island, again, brought out the tobacco, put it on, which I think the children, when we left, stole right away and brought back to their homes, these sticks of tobacco. That was our second stop. Again, asking the witches, this time it was something about the weather, and that the weather treats us well, and something to that nature. Third stop. Third stop was the interesting stop. This was down here, and this was the part of the island that had the only real entry in and out of the lagoon. And when the tide was going out, the water rushed out of the lagoon, causing a rapid river running. And then when the tide was coming in, the water rushed in. And right there was the altar to the third witch. And this is what we had to say to the third witch. Dear witch, by the maggots of your vagina, we ask that you bless us with a bounty of fish. And that was it. Put down our tobacco. I thought it was the craziest blessing I had ever heard in my life. Ekiata kind of, my guide, he kind of rolled his eyes at it, but that's what it was. And this is what they had been saying for centuries for this witch. Well, then we moved up to the fourth altar, top of the island, the north side, and this is where we once again said our thank you for accepting us to this island, and we ask that you again bless us, and that we will in turn bless you and the 4 witches. That was our entry to Kiribati. 2.5 years on that small island, 17 miles around, largely a lagoon in the middle, living off of fish and crabs and shellfish and coconut, and every day provided its own new tale. And I have many a hobo tales to talk about on this little tiny island called Marakei in the country of Kiribati, located on the equator and the international date line. Well, till next time, I'm Chris Brown, part-time hobo, Sabo, sabo ng abong.